And then you get into why are they using it? I think they're blocking out some bodies, something we're not supposed to see, and they're re-simulating the sun with this. And they maybe have multiple of them, and they can just turn them on, turn them off at will. That's okay. Wow. We're going to move on to the big portion of the show. This is the 3 Days of Darkness, and this gets into the solar sun stuff as well. Here, folks, I have to bring this article up now. This is on NASA. Milky Way's black hole showing signs of increased chatter. So we hear about this solar sneeze thing that's supposed to happen. And the activity, well, now we got NASA kind of admitting it here. So 3 orbiting X-ray telescopes have detected an increased rate of X-ray flares from the usually quiet giant black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy after a long-term monitoring. Scientists are now trying to learn whether this is normal behavior that was on notice due to limited monitoring, or these flares are triggered by the recent close passage of a mysterious dusty object. They were monitoring the activity for the last 15 years. The biggest thing here is within the past year, there has been a 10-fold increase of these X-rays. So it used to be like one every 10 days. A bright flare would come out. Now it's every day. So you hear about the energy getting ramped up. Now here it is here. They try to poo-poo it a little bit with their G2 cloud that passed by. But I thought it was interesting to show that as we ramp up into these new energies and break through. So now, getting into 3 Days of Darkness. So I was emailed by a viewer. She's probably watching now. She said she doesn't have a Google account, so she doesn't chat. But much appreciated. She's a Patreon supporter. Much appreciated. To look into 3 Days of Darkness. So she sent me a QHHT video, as well as a lady that talks about the biblical aspect. Why can't I say that? Biblical aspect of this as well. So to break this down in bullet points. So basically, this 3 Days of Darkness is supposed to happen between Easter and the summer solstice. We just had Easter a couple weeks ago. Summer solstice is June 21st. And what's supposed to happen is Nibiru is supposed to pass in front of the sun, and this will create the darkness on the planet. It's going to make a clearing, rewiring, changing the DNA. And I have a question mark here, like maybe this is part of the event. And the religious woman talked about it as well. She also got into lock your doors, don't go outside, don't look outside. I hate to say it, folks, I'm going to have to look outside. Block your windows, and basically got into the whole demons are going to be unleashed. Things are going to get crazy. There's going to be high-speed winds, but the temperature will remain at 55 degrees, so people don't freeze to death, if you will. So that's in a very small nutshell of what I found is supposed to happen. It does kind of sound like a doom and gloom thing. Now I want to get into this vision. This is on Extreme Reality Check, a very good YouTube channel. She had a vision of something like this. Well, the planet Nibiru. Let's just take a listen here.
Size of it, what I saw in my vision, it was like this. It was unbelievable. You would think, oh, if we're going to see another planet in the sky, or we're going to see this thing coming, that it's going to look like the moon, or it's going to look like a second sun. But no, it was as if it popped out of another dimension. It
popped,
was
remember that.
Instantly, quickly, this size on the horizon. And actually, in my vision, there was a second object, slightly smaller, that looked sort of like our moon. It was cratered and that sort of thing, but it was also enormous. And it obviously didn't instantly kill us, because in my vision, we were already gathered together as a family. And I kept going to the window to look out at it. It was just too much to take in. And I was telling my brother, I'm like, I tried to tell you about this 20 years ago and you wouldn't believe me. But look, it is here. And honestly.
So now that's very interesting, because a lot of people are having this vision. I had a similar vision. I showed this last week on the show, so I'm going to show it again because I wanted to break this down. This is what I've seen. And For those listening on the podcast, what I've seen, okay, I was looking out I was actually on the outside by my house. We got some land here in the distance, and you can see the sun. The sun was there, and there was a little bit of clouds behind it. And there was this big, big celestial object next to the sun, right, the right of it. Kind of just like what she had, only she was saying hers was a moon and it looked like Jupiter. I'm assuming it was more of a Jupiter object. I seen what looked like two suns to me, but on the big one had the flower of life on it. And for the longest time, I didn't know what the hell. By the way, in that vision, I say it's a vision because it's more vivid. It's so hard to explain until you go through it. Like a dream, it's like it's kind of hazy. You think that's what happened, but you didn't. This was very direct. It was there. My uncle was there, and I asked him, I said, is that planet Nibiru? And he says, yes, that's planet Nibiru. So that's a direct answer in that vision. And I think it's important to break this down because now, remember, don't forget that she said that it looks like it popped into existence, because that's important as we go through here. There's so many puzzle pieces to try to put all these together. So now to break this down, so what is kind of 3 days of darkness? What could it look like? I didn't even know that this happened, but this happened in Russia. There was 3 hours of darkness. Was in Siberia. I'm going to roll the footage and talk over it because obviously there's no talking or anything. This was from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., their local time. And basically looks like, for those listening, mysterious fog, thick fog or sand, smoke, if you will. And then it just covers, and it's going to get really, really dark. Some people were blaming this whole thing on wildfires that were happening hundreds of miles away. But for it to get this like dark, and that's the other thing too, I never heard the media hush this up too. I didn't see this in the feed. This was last year, by the way, July 27th, 2018. Look at how dark that gets. So when you think of the 3 days of darkness and how dark it could get, that's a perfect example. It's insane. And then he shuts the door and closes it up. But I guess that lasted for 3 hours. So how do you take that? So that's a perfect example of that. So now we get into, this gets deep, folks. Get ready to, if you're not sitting down, sit down now, because this is some holy cow, as Chad said in the chat. This is crazy, crazy stuff. Where's Pete?
Crazy, crazy stuff, right?
So here's an example. Now, there is the technology to make a fake sun. I didn't even really know about this. I thought people were blowing smoke up my ass, whatever. But this clip here shows that NASA has something developed, and they launched it to create artificial light. Here we go.
Alaska. The black dot in front of the sun is equipment that NASA launched hundreds, possibly thousands of miles from the Earth's surface. It casts a reflection upon the water, proving that it's not a camera or lighting issue, but it's an actual piece of equipment, and it's viewed from many different cameras. This black dot equipment is capable of producing an enormous glare, hundreds of miles in diameter, possibly thousands of miles. It always tracks in perfect synchronization with the sun. So essentially, the circular glare is always between Earth and the sun, but much closer to the Earth, of course. There is nothing special about this old video from Portage Glacier.
By the way, this is a very important part. This blew my mind.
Alaska, a year ago. The sun is seen passing behind a post. The importance of these frames is that we are looking at the real sun. Notice how the sun passes behind a post, and the post cannot hide the sun because the real sun is too large to be hidden behind a small post.
Pretty simple.
I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. You'll see in a moment why this is important. Here's an interesting sign in the sky, viewed from the west-facing camera in Burwash, in the Yukon Territory. We see what looks like the sun, but it's not. As it passes behind a thin post, it completely disappears from view. The reason this is happening is because the light source we are viewing is the glare produced by the black dot equipment that reflects upon the water surface. Where's the real sun? It is currently behind a dark nebula that we will be looking at in just a minute.
This gets deep. So that's actually a fake sun, folks. It goes behind the post. Everything's blocked out because the actual beam of light is not wide, it's small, and then they're using these mirrors to refract it out and make it look bigger than it actually is. Mind-blowing, okay? Now you say, how the hell do they actually have this stuff? It's like, interesting. Can you really prove it? Okay, let's move on. They got this mirror thing. This is a NASA one here. And you can kind of see that it's a hexagonal structure. But even so, you can say, well, whatever. By the way, here's another one in Germany with, they got all these, they look like heating lamps. Lots of them. Now, this particular one wasn't a one that could go up in space or take off from the ground. They just had it on the surface there to do their experiments. But here it is now. NASA simulates the sun's power on Earth to test hardware intended for space. In this facility to test the thermal balance before the instrument is on its way to Mercury. So they're building this thing, testing it here publicly. This is public. So what aren't they doing that's public? By the way, I highlighted here 144 segmented mirrors. Has anybody getting the number 144 popping up a lot for synchronistic numbers? That number is bombarding me lately, so I don't know what's going on with that. If it's part of the 144,000 or what the deal is. But anyway, they can beam tons of energy with it, and it looks like that. So now this was on Mr. MBB 333. This object was seen in South Dakota. It looks similar, maybe not exactly, but it is similar to what I just showed you. Here's a side-by-side comparison for those watching. Now you say, why isn't it bright? Well, maybe they just have it turned off and it's just sitting there. I don't think they have to use this all the time. And then you get into, why are they using it? I think they're blocking out some bodies, something we're not supposed to see, and they're resimulating the sun with this. And they maybe have multiple of them, and they can just turn them on, turn them off at will. That's okay. Wow. Here's a rendition of what they could have out there. Be very easy. This also puts the exclamation mark on the flat earthers ain't totally wrong, because it's possible now. Wow. And of course, here's some patents. If you still don't believe it, here's some patents. This is a solar simulator. This was filed in 1963. So they're able to, they had the idea of creating radiant energy source. That was one there. Here's another one here. Illumination system, including a virtual light source. This was in 1961. So you put a few years on this stuff, folks. You take into account the SSP, the Solar Warden project. They can build these big ships. By the way, they build them on Earth, fly them up. Why is this? This ain't beyond the scope of anything. You could build to be honest, this thing is probably like half the size of one of those big motherships we built for Solar Warden. And they could easily do this. So we keep on moving down the line here to break this down. Sundogs. You see these flares like this. So now this is where it gets really like, because I've seen these before, not in person, but the pictures, and I didn't really think anything of them. But now when you think about it from a whole new perspective, let me get myself in here. So what they're saying this is, So the dot, let me get the, actually I can draw right on the picture here. Go like this. Okay, so grab the pencil. Got the circular part right here. Well, that is basically what's being cloaked. And of course, you got this bright object here. You'd assume the sun, but let's just, for all intents and purposes, they're saying this is the fake sun, the solar sun. Okay? And it really shows because when you get this reflection on the sides here and here, refraction, I guess is probably the right word, you get that effect. So you got your fake sun here, you got a cloak, maybe you're trying to cover up a celestial body or whatever, and then you got the real sun behind it shining back, and that's creating that, it's bouncing off that cloak or the celestial object, if you will, and making it that way. When I seen that, I was like, holy cow. And then there's multiple ones of these, of course, too. Gotta quit out of this thing. Crazy stuff. And, some people might, it just does that when it's on the horizon. Here's one that's farther up. Proud Texas lady in the chat says, okay, my mind is blown. When I thought of this, I was like, holy cow. Now we put all these puzzle pieces together, folks. Remember what I said, to remember that she said it popped into existence. What if? By the way, if you guys want to, I'm going to open the phone lines. If you want to call in and give some input on this, your mind's blown, please call in 1-605-562-0444, 1-605-562-0444, and then put in the call ID 146509#, and I'll get you up on the air. Put the puzzle pieces together for all this. So she says it pops into existence. What if we get a solar sneeze, a solar flash that brings the electrical grid down? What if it takes down their cloaking apparatus? What's going to happen? Nibiru is going to pop into existence. Boom! Holy cow. That's what we're dealing with here.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. I mean, I had to sit down. Now here's another clip I want to show. To say how could they do some of this stuff? You can actually bend light around objects. For those listening, there's basically a sight glass, and then there's a person putting their hand behind it. And as they stick their hand behind it, you can't see the hand.
By bending light with these magnifying glass arrays, you can not only make the object invisible, like you can see here, they have their hand behind it, and it's completely invisible, but they bend the light around, and you'll be able to see what is happening behind the object that is being hidden. So look at this.
Crazy. You can actually cover something up.
Here they just do the same thing with a spoon.
Well, for those listening on the podcast, there's again a sight glass. They got a spoon right in front of it. You can't see the spoon because it's bending the light around the spoon. They stick their hand behind it. You can see the hand. Wow.
So not only does this technology exist, but they've created ways of doing it in tiny, tiny forms and in massive, deployable into our atmosphere forms. This is reality. This isn't conspiracy.
It's not beyond them to do this on a bigger, grander scale. So, oh man, my mind just got blown again thinking about all this stuff. The fact that they could have that. The one thing that really struck me about this whole thing was the person spotting that in South Dakota. That was the big one for me because that really put the puzzle pieces together. The fact that these things are up there, and it's definitely not beyond them to do that. So the fact that, holy cow, folks, they can simulate the sun, they can do all this, they can make it look like. So this is now my mind kept thinking more and more and more about all this. Like, what's another step? Like, maybe we have been, and actually in that video, she went into it more. There have been times in I think it was in like over in Germany or something like that, where it was dark and it should have been light. So I think they have these up there now, like they could actually prevent 3 days of darkness from us seeing it. Maybe we already had a few dark days and we don't know because they can just turn these on. Crazy.